Hi guys, my name's Mark Law and I am an alcoholic. Hi guys, my name's Mark Law, creator of Rational Wine, Consult Wine, and 7 Key Wine Concepts. In this video, we're going to talk about how to think of flavors in wine. In my experience, when I hand someone a glass of wine and I ask them what the flavors or aromas they're getting, very much of the time the response is very shotgun style. Of course, there's fruit, which leads me to ask, what kind of fruit are you getting? And the response is usually lemon, peach, pineapple, apricot, orange, maybe some flowers. And while I'm able to understand what they're talking about, to the average person this seems very random. There's no rhyme or reason or organization behind what terms are being picked out, and I can see the frustration on their faces when they're trying to think of what words to use. And this is a bit sad because it doesn't have to be this way. I want to introduce to you a method of organizing your analysis of your smells and tastes when you get a wine, and this is going to be a very powerful tool for you to use when you're trying to pick out a wine that matches your tastes. Once again, I'm going to avoid using too much technical jargon, but I will be introducing some new concepts and I'll expand on them a little bit because knowing about these things is going to help you with your wine choices in the future. I'm not also going to give you a long list of descriptors for you to memorize, but there will be a few key categories and hopefully these will spark something in your imagination, and that's going to help you to find the right answers as you smell and taste a wine. A lot of this material is actually based on the WSET's Systematic Approach to Tasting, or the SAT. I'm going to link down in the description for you to have a look at. Please check it out, print it, read it, and have some fun with it. And if you do have the opportunity, check out their website, see if there is a course provider in your city, and I highly recommend sitting through a course because it's going to expand your knowledge and your awareness of what is available in the world of wine. So let's get started. Before anything else, be honest. When you smell or taste a wine and there is an aroma or flavor that really stands out to you, go ahead and say it out loud. But if you don't feel like you're getting a lot, if the wine's not speaking to you at all, don't feel that you have to make stuff up. This is not an exercise where you have to impress me or your friends or anyone else. Look at the wine clearly with no preconceptions and just call out what you see. Like anything else in life, tasting is a skill, but for some reason this is a skill that we have not been brought up to pay attention to. Instead, our education systems tell us to learn about calculus, trigonometry, postmodern literature, contemporary art. So it's not surprising at all that our ability to express ourselves through our senses has been neglected. The good news is that it's never too late to learn and develop the skill, and it's going to be a lot of fun. First, we can split our flavors and aromas into 3 categories: primary, secondary, and tertiary. If you're watching this and you're legally old enough to drink alcohol, you've probably gone through some education system, and depending on where you are, you might know these as elementary school, middle school, high school, college, university, but they fit under 3 categories: primary education, secondary education, tertiary education. So you can use this experience to remind you that aromas and flavors in wine fit into these categories: primary characters, secondary characters, tertiary characters. Now let's explore these categories one by one to see what they mean. Primary characters are pretty much anything that has to do with fruits or vegetables. We're going to talk about that vegetable component later, but let's focus on fruit first. And these fruit components we can further split into white wines and red wines. With white wines, we can split these into 4 categories: citrus, tree, stone, and tropical fruits. Let's start with citrus. Of course, anything in that family is like a lemon, lime, grapefruit, orange, mandarin, clementine, yuzus. Then we've got tree fruits. I like to put pears and apples in that category. And then of course you've got red apples, green apples, golden apples, nashi pears, woolly and violet pears. Next we've got stone fruits, any fruit with a stone in it obviously, so peaches, nectarines, apricots. And finally you have tropical fruits, anything that's very exotic, something that you might find in a tropical fruit salad. So pineapples, mangoes, bananas, lychees, guava, passion fruit, melon. Notice that the list is also in order of ripeness or juiciness, I like to say. Look at the extremes. Lemons are very sharp and acidic, they're not sweet at all. All the way on the other end, you've got, say, a mango, which is very juicy, it's very sweet, and it's very mellow. Everything else lies in between. So think of a green apple, it's closer to the citrus end of the spectrum, whereas a juicy peach is more closer to the tropical end of the spectrum. Again, don't try to memorize every single fruit that exists in the world. Use these 4 categories to jumpstart your imagination, and that's going to help guide you. So you smell a wine, what citrus am I getting? And then what kind of tree fruits am I getting? And also remember to be honest. If you're not getting something in a wine, that is just as important as what you are getting in the wine. Am I getting any stone fruits? No. Am I getting any tropical fruits? No. Next. So be quick and decisive on that first round, and of course you can always go back and revisit if you feel like it. Now let's have a look at red wines. This is much easier. You have red, black, and blue fruits. Red fruits, anything like red cherries, raspberries, strawberries, cranberries, red currants. Black, you've got blackberries, black currants, black cherries. Blue, you've got more blueberry and plum. Most wines made from a single grape variety, they are going to focus on one of these colors, and then maybe you'll get a few in the other categories. So you might have a wine that shows mainly cherries, raspberries, strawberries, and then just a little bit of blackberry. Or you might have a wine that focuses on the black spectrum, and that might just have a few in either the red or the blue. Very rarely you'll get red and blue fruits together in a single varietal wine. If you do get a glass of wine and it does have a large range of fruits, oftentimes these are blends. So you might have something like a Grenache Syrah Mourvedre from the Rhone Valley, or it might be a Cabernet Merlot blend from Bordeaux, or they might be New World examples of these wines. Now let's talk about the vegetable component, which covers both white and red wines. And this might be technically incorrect, but I also like to put anything that's not a fruit there. So things like flowers, herbs, and spices. This just gives me a chance to cover everything at once. Again, just pay attention to the wine and be honest with what you are getting. In terms of vegetable aromas, in wines you often get bell pepper, capsicum, tomato, radish, cabbage, black and green olives. With flowers, of course, any flower you like, dandelions, lilies, roses, violets. Herbs, you can have mint, sage, basil, dill, parsley, anything you might have used in cooking, or you might have a dried version on your spice rack in your kitchen somewhere. And finally, you've got spices, something like fresh ginger, black and white pepper, cardamom, anise, licorice, jalapeno. And you can see by how diverse these descriptors are that there really are no barriers. There's no limits on what terms you might want to use. So please feel free to be as creative as you want to describe the aromas in the wine that you see. For bonus points, consider the nature of what you're smelling and tasting. If you taste a peach or you smell roses, is it underripe? Is it just ripe? Is it overripe? Is it fresh, dried, candied, jammy, boiled, or decaying? Each of these descriptors will bring to mind a different experience, and that's going to help you to narrow down exactly why you enjoy or you don't enjoy a particular wine. You can say, I don't like this because it's overripe or underripe, I prefer something in the other end, and that's going to help you to pick out something that you will enjoy later on. Now let's talk about secondary characters. Secondary characters come from what a winemaker does to the wine. And there are 3 things that we are focusing on here: oak treatment, lees stirring, malolactic fermentation. I've mentioned oak maturation before in another video, but let's go into a bit more detail. Oak barrels are made from pieces of wood that have been cut into shape. Take a moment to imagine what a cut piece of wood might smell like, something like sawdust or sap. Now these pieces of wood are put together and shaped into a barrel. And you can use the barrel as it is, but more often than not, the barrel is going to be toasted. And toasting a barrel means exposing it to fire, which is going to char the wood. Now take a moment to think about what a burning piece of wood might smell like. I'll just get a bit more technical, but basically the charring in the wood creates a lot of new flavor compounds, which is going to end up in the final wine. A lot of descriptors associated with oak maturation are cedar, smoke, vanilla, cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, coffee, chocolate, coconut, baking spices. If it helps, imagine the richest, most decadent cake you can think of, and you want to put all those ingredients in. That's what you get from oak. Let's talk about lees stirring. What exactly are lees? In another video, we spoke about how yeast is needed in the grape juice, which eats the sugar and turns it into alcohol. So once the yeast has finished its job, it dies. Lees is our technically, politically correct term for referring to these dead yeast cells. And yeast isn't just used to make wine, it's actually used for baking and beer making, which is why sometimes you can get toasted bread, biscuits, pastry, even walnuts and hazelnuts in the wine as well. Lees characters are most commonly associated with white wines, especially Chardonnay, but other varietal wines might use this technique as well, so this is something you should keep in mind. Now let's talk about malolactic fermentation. This is relating to two types of acids, malic and lactic acid. Malic acid has a sharper flavor, think about green apples or lemons. Then you've got lactic acid, which is much softer. Think of lactose and what products contain lactose. Dairy products like milk, cheese, yogurt, and cream. So malolactic fermentation is the process of changing malic acid into lactic acid. The wine goes from being sharp and harsh, and then it becomes mellow and soft. This is done with most red wines automatically, not to give it dairy aromas, but just to soften out the acidity and make it more easy drinking later on. More importantly, with white wines, this is a technique most associated with Chardonnay. So many people who say that they hate Chardonnay, they're probably thinking about those examples that are woody, toasty, and buttery. In other words, they've got oak, lees, and malolactic fermentation going on with them. And not all Chardonnays go through these processes. More than once I have given that same person a taste of a Chardonnay that had no oak, it's not buttery, and it's clean and crisp and refreshing, and it changes their life. Like, oh my god, I've been missing out on this my whole life. And that's another reason why I love to do what I do, because to be able to change another person's mind and broaden their perspective, that's something special. Finally, we have tertiary characters. If primary characters come from fruits, secondary characters come from what the winemaker does, then tertiary characters come from the passage of time. This doesn't mean that young wines can't have tertiary aromas, but we say that as a wine ages, the fruit drops out of the wine, and this gives the secondary and tertiary characters a chance to take center stage as you're smelling and tasting them. So a lot of earthy and savory aromas will come under the tertiary category. Think about smoked meats, mushrooms, wet leaves on a forest floor, barnyard, tobacco, potpourri, petrol or gasoline or lighter fluid, tar. The term petrichor can be used, and that is the smell of rain falling on hot rocks. Basically, if it doesn't fit in primary or secondary, then you can put it under the tertiary category. So one last time, let's just recap. Before anything else, be honest. Next, split the categories into primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary, split it into red and white wines. White wines, you've got citrus, tree, stone, tropical fruits. Red wines, you've got red, black, and blue. And don't forget about the vegetable characters, which includes flowers, herbs, and spices. And also consider the nature of the fruits. Is it fresh, ripe, overripe, decaying, dried? Then think about the secondary characters, which is what the winemaker does to the wine, and the winemaker can control oak, lees stirring, and MLF, malolactic fermentation. Finally, there is the tertiary character, which becomes more obvious as the wine ages over time. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. We've only covered flavors and aromas in wine. I haven't spoken anything relating to structure or quality in wines, so things like sugar, acid, tannin, alcohol, body, balance, length, intensity, complexity. These are super important and I will definitely cover them in a future video, but for now I want you to take your time and enjoy and appreciate those smells and flavors that you're going to get out of the wine. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, share this video with your friends. If you have any questions, please send me an email or a direct message, or please leave a comment below and I shall reply to you there. See you soon.